Here's what I've noticed. A lot of us are tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. We're doing all the things. We're working. We're showing up. We're answering the texts. We're managing the list. We're taking care of the people, the responsibilities, and the obligations. And still, there's this hum underneath everything. Something unfinished. Something pulling at us. Something we keep meaning to handle, say, decide, clean up, complete, change, or stop carrying. And for a long time, I thought that hum was a personal failing. Maybe I wasn't disciplined enough. Maybe I wasn't organized enough. Maybe I needed a better system, a better planner, a better morning routine, a better calendar, or a better version of myself. But that wasn't the real issue. The issue was open loops. An open loop is a commitment, promise, or agreement that is unfinished, incomplete, or outdated, and it quietly drains your time, your energy, and your peace. Some open loops are obvious: the task you haven't finished, the decision you keep putting off, the project that's half done. But some open loops are quieter: the promise you made to yourself and broke again, the conversation that really needed to happen but didn't, the relationship where something changed but nobody named it, the old agreement you're still living under even though it no longer fits. Today, I want to talk about the whole idea, because you can't close what you can't see. Most people were never told there was anything to see. I'm Robin Quinn Keehn, and this is the Liberated Life Podcast. Let's get into it. I want to start with that phrase again because I think so many people recognize it immediately. Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. There is a physical tired. That's real. You've had a long day. You didn't sleep well. Your body needs rest. But then there's another kind of tired. It's the tired of being pulled in too many directions, the tired of trying to remember too much, the tired of carrying things you haven't named, the tired of waking up with a list already running in your mind, the tired of knowing there are things you need to deal with but you don't quite know where to begin. And from the outside, you may be very functional. That's part of the problem. You can be highly capable and still be quietly overloaded. You can be productive and still not feel peaceful. You can get a lot done and still feel like something is always chasing you. That's the hum, the low-grade unfinishedness, the background noise. And when you live with it long enough, you start to think it's normal. You stop noticing how much energy it takes to keep all those open loops alive. But your mind is tracking them. Your body is tracking them. Your nervous system is tracking them. The appointment you haven't made. The email you haven't answered, the check you haven't put in the mail, the decision you keep pushing forward, the conversation you keep meaning to have, the apology you owe, the boundary you haven't set, the closet you don't want to open, the commitment you made months ago that no longer fits, the thing you said yes to that you dread now, the promise you made to yourself again that you didn't keep. Each one may seem small, but together they create weight. And most people do not realize they're tired because they are carrying too many unfinished things. They think they need more discipline. They think they need more motivation. They think they just need to try harder. But often what they need is to close loops. Let's define it plainly. An open loop is a commitment, promise, or agreement that is unfinished, incomplete, or outdated, and it quietly drains your time, energy, and peace. That definition matters because an open loop is not just a task. It's not just something on your to-do list. It can be a task, but it also can be a relationship, a decision, a conversation, an agreement, a role, a habit, an expectation, or an identity you're still carrying even though it no longer belongs. Some open loops are unfinished. You started something and didn't complete it. The project, the paperwork, the sweater you're knitting, the course, the follow-up, the closet, the thank you note, the half-written idea. Some loops are incomplete. You technically did the thing, but something about it still isn't done. You had the conversation, but you didn't say the real thing. You made the decision, but you haven't done anything about it. You apologized, but you didn't actually repair it. You cleaned the room, but you avoided that one box in the corner. Some open loops are outdated. This one is important because sometimes the loop isn't open because you failed. It's open because the agreement expired and nobody updated it. You're still living under a yes that no longer fits. You're still carrying a responsibility that should have been renegotiated. You're still showing up for something that made sense in one season but no longer makes sense now. You're still keeping an old promise to a past version of yourself. And that kind of loop can be especially draining because from the outside, it can look responsible. It can look loyal. It can look committed. But inside, you know something is off. The agreement has changed. The capacity has changed. The season has changed. And you have changed. And when you don't update the loop, you keep paying for it. That's why open loops matter. They do not just sit quietly in the background. They pull. They take up space. They demand attention. Even when you're not consciously thinking about them, they're still using energy. It's like having too many tabs open. Each one may be small, but eventually the system slows down. For today, I want to name 3 kinds of open loops almost all of us carry. There are more categories we could talk about, but these 3 are a strong place to start. Relational loops, self loops, and unspoken brokens. Let's take them one at a time. A relational loop is an open loop between you and another person. Something unresolved, something unclear, something avoided, something assumed but never spoken. It may be with a spouse, a child, a parent, a sibling, a friend, a colleague, a client, or someone you used to be close to. Relational loops can sound like, I need to call her. I need to respond to that message. I need to tell him that doesn't work for me anymore. I need to apologize. I need to ask what happened. I need to stop pretending I'm okay with this. I need to make a decision about this relationship. I need to end this relationship. These loops are often heavy because relationships matter. And because they matter, we often avoid them longer than we should. We tell ourselves we're just waiting for the right time. But many times we're really waiting for a time when the conversation will not require courage. And that time rarely comes. Then there are self loops. These are the loops between you. And I think these are some of the most costly. A self loop is a promise you made to yourself and didn't keep. I'm going to start walking every morning. I'm going to stop checking my phone first thing. I'm going to finish this draft. I'm going to clean that closet. I'm going to stop saying yes when I mean no. I'm going to make the appointment. I'm finally going to take care of this. I'm going to get up when my alarm goes off. And then you don't. And at first, that might not seem like a big deal. Life happens, things change, you're tired, the week gets full. But every time you make a promise to yourself and break it without telling the truth, something happens. Your confidence takes a hit. Not usually in a loud way, in a quiet way. You start trusting yourself a little less. You start hearing your own commitments as suggestions. You say, I'm going to do this. And part of you says, are you? Because you have a history with yourself. And that history matters. Every broken promise to yourself chips away at your confidence until somewhere inside you, you stop believing in yourself. That might sound strong, but I think it's true. A lot of what people call low confidence is actually the accumulated weight of broken self-trust. You don't need to hate yourself for that. You need to rebuild trust with yourself. And you rebuild it by closing open loops, not by making bigger promises, but by making cleaner ones. The third kind is what I call an unspoken broken. This is something that needed to be said and wasn't. We talked about this in an earlier episode when we talked about resentment, and we touched on it again in another episode where we talked about going quiet. An unspoken broken is the moment when something shifted, something hurt, something broke a little, and nobody said anything about it. It might have been a comment that landed wrong, a betrayal that was minimized, a moment of disrespect, a disappointment, a silence, an exclusion, a change in the relationship. And instead of saying, hey, something happened here, you absorbed it. You moved on. You stayed pleasant, you stayed quiet, and the open loop remained. And over time, that unspoken thing begins to shape the relationship. It changes your tone, your availability, your warmth, your trust, your willingness. And often the other person does not even know what they are now living inside of. They don't know there's a file. They don't know there's a story. They don't know there's a moment you keep returning to. That's the cost of an unspoken broken. What needed to be said did not disappear. It just went underground. And things that go underground do not always die. Sometimes they grow big roots. So why do loops stay open? This is where I want to say something plainly. Open loops are not usually a discipline problem. They are usually an avoidance problem. It doesn't mean you're lazy, it doesn't mean you're weak or that you lack character. It means there's something about the loop that you do not want to face. A decision, a disappointment, a potential conflict, a loss, a limit, a truth, a consequence, a next step. And that's why so many productivity systems only help for a little while. You can organize your list, you can color code your calendar, you can download the app, you can buy the planner, and some of that may help. I love a good list, but a list cannot close a loop you're avoiding for emotional reasons. A checklist cannot tell the truth for you. A planner cannot have the hard conversation. A calendar cannot decide what you no longer have capacity for. This is why we keep transferring the same unfinished things from one week to the next. We are not just managing tasks. We are managing discomfort, and that is a very different thing. Think about the thing you keep moving forward, the thing that has lived on your list for weeks, months, maybe even years. There's probably a reason it has not been done. Maybe finishing it means someone will be disappointed. Maybe making the call means you will have to admit that something has changed. Maybe sending the email means you have to deal with a response. Maybe cleaning the room means facing grief. Maybe completing the project means being seen. Maybe ending the commitment means someone will be upset. Maybe recommitting means you have to tell the truth about how much it actually matters. That's not laziness, that's avoidance, and avoidance is human. But avoidance is expensive. It borrows relief from today and charges interest tomorrow. That's what open loops do. They cost more the longer they stay open. Let's talk about the cost, because open loops always cost something. The first cost is time. Not just the time it would take to do the thing, but the time you spend thinking about the thing, moving it from list to list, remembering it, forgetting it, remembering it again, explaining to yourself why you haven't done it, looking for a better time, waiting until you feel ready, waiting until the other person's life calms down. That is time. The second cost is energy. Open loops are draining because they keep calling your attention back. Even when you're doing something else, part of you is still tracking what remains unfinished. You may be sitting there at dinner, but the loop is also with you. You may be trying to rest, but the loop is right there. You may be working on something important, but there's that open loop again. That is energy leakage. The third cost is peace. This may be the most obvious one. Open loops create a sense of internal noise. You don't feel settled. You don't feel clean. You don't feel complete. Even when nothing urgent is happening, something feels unresolved. That is the hum. But the fourth cost is the one I want to slow down on. Open loops cost you belief in yourself, especially self loops. When you repeatedly tell yourself you will do something and then do not do it, you begin to lose confidence in your own word. And I don't mean this harshly, I mean it with compassion, because many of us were never taught to make commitments cleanly. We overcommit. We say yes too quickly. We confuse desire with capacity. We make promises from the version of ourselves that is inspired, but the version of ourselves that has to execute is tired. And then when we don't follow through, we turn on ourselves. We say, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? But the better question is, what loop am I leaving open? Did I make a promise I never had capacity for? Did I say yes when I meant maybe? Did I agree to something because I wanted to be seen in a certain way? Did I avoid ending something because I didn't want to disappoint someone? Did I keep an outdated agreement because I didn't want to admit that the season had changed? That's where the work begins, not with shame, but with clarity. Not because you're lazy, but because you're carrying a load no one ever taught you to put down. So how do we close these open loops? This is the part I want to make very practical. There are 3 ways to close any loop. You can end it, you can evolve it, or you can recommit to it on purpose. That last part matters on purpose, because the problem with open loops is that they often stay open by default. We don't choose them, we just drift with them. We avoid them. We keep carrying them because we haven't stopped long enough to decide. So let's walk through the 3 options. Sometimes the cleanest way to close a loop is to end it. Cancel the commitment, send the email, say no, throw it away, release the project. Stop pretending you're going to finish the book, the course, the craft, the plan, the idea, the obligation, the version of yourself you no longer want. Ending something can feel like failure, but often ending is integrity. It's telling the truth. It's saying, this no longer fits, or I do not have the capacity for this, or I am no longer willing to keep pretending this is going to happen. There is enormous relief in a clean ending. Not everything needs to be completed. Some things need to close. Some things need to end. Sometimes the loop does not need to end. It needs to change. The agreement needs to be updated. The timeline needs to be renegotiated. The role needs to be clarified. The commitment needs to be resized. The project needs a new shape. This is especially true for outdated loops. Maybe you said yes in one season, but the season changed. Maybe the commitment made sense 6 months ago, but now it needs to be adjusted. Maybe the relationship needs a new boundary. Maybe the plan just needs to be smaller. Maybe the standard you set was too high for the life you're actually living. Evolving a loop sounds like, I still want to do this, just not at this pace. Or, I can help, but not in that way. Or, I need to change what I committed to. Or, this still matters, but the plan needs to be different. That's not quitting. That's updating reality. And sometimes the open loop needs your clean yes. Not the old yes, not the guilty yes, not the vague yes. A current, honest, deliberate yes. This still matters. I still choose this. I am willing to give it time, energy, and attention. And when you recommit, you need to make it specific. Not, I need to get healthy. What does that actually mean? Not, I need to work on my book. When? For how long? What is the next action? Not, I need to fix the relationship. What is the first thing you need to say? What is the conversation? What is the request? Recommitment requires clarity because vague commitments become open loops almost immediately. A clean recommitment sounds like, I will spend 20 minutes on this on Tuesday. I will send the email before noon. I will make the appointment today. I will have a conversation this week. I will walk for 10 minutes after breakfast. I will finish this version, not the perfect version. That is how self-trust gets rebuilt. Small, clean promises kept. Not giant promises that collapse under the weight of real life. Small, clean promises. So if this feels like a lot, I want to bring it all the way down. You do not need to close every open loop this week. You do not need to overhaul your entire life. You do not need to become a new person by Monday. You just need to close one loop. One. That's where the shift begins. Because once you close one loop, something changes. You prove to yourself that unfinished does not have to stay unfinished. You prove that the hum can quiet. You prove that your word to yourself can mean something again, and the loop does not have to be huge. In fact, I wouldn't start with the most emotionally complicated one. I'd start with something small enough to close. The text, the form, the appointment, the item to throw away, the email to send, the small decision to make, the commitment to end, the 5-minute conversation, the promise to yourself that needs to become smaller and cleaner. Ask yourself, what is one loop that is currently draining my time, energy, or peace? Then ask, does this need to end? Does this need to evolve? Or do I want to recommit to it? Those 3 questions can change the whole thing because now you're no longer managing a vague sense of overwhelm. You're making a decision, and decisions close loops. Not all at once, but one at a time. And one at a time is enough. That's the work of liberation. Not getting your whole life perfectly organized, not becoming endlessly productive, not proving you can do everything, but telling the truth about what is open, what it's costing you, and what you're willing to do about it now. That is how you stop stealing from yourself. You stop letting the unfinished quietly take your time, your energy, and your peace. You close one loop, and then the next, and the next. This is exactly why I created the 5-day detox your to-do list challenge, because most people do not need another productivity challenge that tells them to do more. They need a way to look at what they're already carrying and decide what actually belongs. That is different. This challenge is not about cramming more into your day. It's not about becoming a machine. It's not about proving your worth by how much you can accomplish. It's about cleaning up the open loops that are quietly draining you. For 5 days, we are going to look at the unfinished things differently. Not through shame, not through pressure, but through clarity. What's open, what's outdated, what's no longer yours. What promises need to be released? What promise needs to be renegotiated? What conversation needs to happen? What commitment needs a clean ending? What loop is stealing your peace? The challenge starts on June 29th. And if you're listening and thinking, this is exactly what's been running in the background of my life, I want you there. But the place you can start before the challenge starts is the free Close One Loop tool. It walks you through one open loop, start to finish, in just a few minutes. You can get it at closetheloopsnow.com/tool. This will also get you on the list for the challenge. And truly, don't wait for the challenge to begin. If you're ready, close one loop today. One small thing. End it, evolve it, or recommit to it on purpose. That's enough to begin. So here's where I'll leave you today. That tired you feel, the kind that sleep doesn't fix, may not be a discipline problem. It may be the weight of too many open loops, too many unfinished things, too many outdated agreements, and too many broken promises to yourself. Too many conversations that needed to happen and didn't. Too many things quietly pulling at your time, your energy, and your peace. And I want you to hear this clearly. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not failing because you haven't figured out a way to carry it all better. Some of it was just never meant to be carried this long. What is one open loop that's been quietly running your life? Pick one and close it now. I hope you'll join me on the 5-day Detox Your To-Do List Challenge starting June 29th. I'm Robin Quinn Keehn. This is The Liberated Life. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.